Now we come to the sutta number 3.6.60. Now Sangarava, the Brahmin, came to see the Exalted One. As he sat at one side, he said this to the Exalted One: Master Gotama, we Brahmins, let me tell you, offer sacrifice and cause others to do so. Therefore, Master Gotama, whoso offers sacrifice or causes others to do so, one and all are proficient in a practice of merit that affects many persons, that is, which results from offering sacrifice. Now, Master Gotama, he who goes forth as a wanderer from this or that family, from the home to the homeless life, tames only the single self, calms only the single self, leads to Nibbana only the single self. So what I say is, thus he is proficient in a practice of merit that affects only one person as a result of his going forth. Let me stop here to make a comment. This, what the Brahmin is saying here is a kind of idea that a lot of people have, that if a person practices the spiritual path, he is only helping himself. In other words, he is more selfish than the person who does dana, makes offerings, because making offerings you help many people. You are benefiting a lot of people, whereas you cultivate the holy life, you become a monk or something, you're only helping yourself, and that is selfish. So let's see what the Buddha said. The Buddha said, well, Brahmin, as to that I will question you. Do you answer as you think fit? Now what think you, Brahmin? In this connection, a Tathagata arises in the world, an Arahant who is a fully enlightened one, perfect in knowledge and practice, well-farer, world-knower, incomparable charioteer of men to be tamed, teacher of devas and mankind, a Buddha, an exalted one. He says thus, come, this is the way, this is the practice, proficient in which I make known that incomparable bliss which is steeped in the holy life by my own powers of comprehension, realizing it. Come you also, practice so that you too may be proficient therein, so that you too by your own powers of comprehension may realize it and abide therein. Thus this teacher teaches Dhamma, and others too practice to attain that end. Moreover, there are many hundreds, many thousands, many hundreds of thousands of such. Now what think you, Brahmin? Since this is so, is it a practice of merit affecting only one person or many persons? That is the result of going forth as a wanderer. And the Brahmin replied, no, Master Gotama, it affects many persons, this going forth. Let's stop here for a while. So here the Buddha is saying, by becoming a Buddha, he has taught many hundreds of thousands of people to practice the holy path also. And so the Brahmin had to admit, yes, that his going forth as a monk is helping a lot of people. Now, just now you were saying whether a monk practicing the holy path is selfish. Is an Arahant selfish? Now this selfishness, where does it come from? Selfishness, meanness, doing wrong things. It all comes from the ego. Because we have the ego, we have to protect the self. And the self is not only this body of that person. All that is associated with this body, that means like my husband, my wife, my children, my parents, my relatives, those of my own faith, those of my countrymen, those from my same village, etc. All this is associated with the self. So, because of that, you see sometimes race and race go to war, kill each other, like in Africa, because their self, they are trying to protect their greater self. That means all of those that belong to their race. And sometimes people of different religions also take the sword and kill each other. Why? Because they see that those of their same religion are part of their own self. So when we practice the spiritual path, we are trying to eliminate the ego. We are trying to eliminate the self. And when we eliminate the self and become an arahant, then there is no more self. Then that person is the least selfish because he has no more self. So he cannot be selfish at all. That is why the Buddha said in a sutta that if you wanted to take a knife and plunge it into an arahant's chest, he would never shout for help because he has no more self. If you wanted to kill him, he would not resist. So you can see, because an arahant has no self, he cannot be selfish at all, and that kind of person is the highest person in the world. In fact, nobody can be as compassionate as the arahant. The arahant sees that all beings are in his part of his own self. It is all in the consciousness. It's all in his mind. So that is why you can never say that an arahant is selfish. And even if a person doesn't become a Buddha or an arahant, by practicing the way, he is eliminating his ego to a certain extent, so that he is more harmless than an ordinary putujana, an ordinary person. In fact, the ordinary person, the ordinary putujana, is the one that creates all the problems in the world. If a lot of people became Aryas, even the first stage Arya, Sotapanna, then there would be very, very much less problems in the world. So if we help ourselves, we are helping others. If we don't help ourselves, we cannot help others. That's why in one sutta, the Buddha said there are 4 kinds of persons. The worst one is the one who does not help himself, does not help others. Better than this person is the person who helps others but does not help himself. Then, even better than this person is the one who helps himself but does not help others. And the best is the one who helps himself and helps others. So you can see the second and the third person. The one who helps himself is better than the one who helps others. Why? Because even if you help others, as long as you have the self, you will still love yourself the most. Right? Nobody loves another as much as he himself. That is what the Buddha has said. So if we say that we want to help others before helping ourselves, then we are being a bit hypocritical. Because as long as we have the self, nobody is more important than ourselves. Then to continue this sutta. At these words, the Venerable Ananda said this to the Brahmin Sangarava. Of these 2 practices, Brahmin, which appeals to you as being the simpler, the less troublesome, of greater fruit, of greater profit? At these words, the Brahmin Sangarava said this to the Venerable Ananda. Just like the worthy Gotama and the worthy Ananda, both are to me worthy of honor and praise. Then a second time, the Venerable Ananda said to the Brahmin Sangarava, I do not ask you that, Brahmin, as to whom you honor and praise. This is what I am asking you. Which of the 2 practices appeals to you as being the simpler and less troublesome, of greater fruit and profit? Again, the Brahmin Sangarava said, just like the worthy Gotama and the worthy Ananda, both are to me worthy of honor and praise. And the third time, the Venerable Ananda put the same question to him. The third time, the Brahmins made the same reply. I just stop here again to make another comment. Here, the Venerable Ananda is trying to ask him, which one do you think is simpler? The one making dana, giving offerings to a lot of people, or cultivating the holy life? And Brahmin Sangharava did not want to commit himself. He didn't want to say which one is better, because he felt that both are also good. So he said, just like the Venerable Gautama and the Venerable Ananda, both to me are worthy of honor and praise. So he doesn't want to commit himself. And then, thereupon the Exalted One thought, even for a third time, the Brahmin, on being asked a pertinent question by Ananda, evades it, does not reply to it. Suppose I release them from their difficulty. So the Exalted One said this to the Brahmin Sangharava, tell me, Brahmin, what was the topic of conversation today when the royal party sat together in company in the Raja's palace? And he said, this was the topic of conversation, Master Gautama. In former times, monks were fewer in number, but those possessed of supernormal powers were more numerous. They showed the marvel of supernormal power. But now it is just the opposite. That was the topic of conversation today, Master Gautama, when the royal party sat together in company in the Raja's palace. And the Buddha said, now as to that, Brahmin, there are these three types of marvels. What three? The marvel of supernormal power, the marvel of thought reading, and the marvel of teaching. And what, Brahmin, is the marvel of supernormal power? In this case, a certain one enjoys various sorts of supernormal power. From being one, he becomes many. From being many, he becomes one. Manifest or invisible, he goes unhindered through a wall, through a rampart, through a mountain, as if through the air. He plunges into the earth and shoots up again as if in water. He walks upon the water without parting it, as if on solid ground. He travels through the air, sitting cross-legged, like a bird upon the wing. Even this moon and sun, though of such mighty power and majesty, he handles them and strokes them with his hand. Even as far as the Brahma world, he has power with his body. This Brahmin is called the marvel of supernormal power. And what Brahmin is the marvel of thought reading? In this case, a certain one can declare by means of a sign, thus is your mind, such and such is your mind, thus is your consciousness, and however much he may tell, so it is and not otherwise. And again, Brahmin, perhaps a certain one does not declare such things by means of a sign, but he does so after hearing a voice from men, or non-humans, or from devas, and says, thus is your mind, such and such is your mind, thus is your consciousness, and however much he may tell, so it is and not otherwise. Here again, Brahmin, perhaps a certain one does not declare these things by means of a sign, or on hearing a voice from men, or non-humans, or from devas, but he does so judging from some sound he has heard, an utterance intelligently made by one who is reasoning intelligently. So hearing, he declares, thus is your mind, such and such is your mind, thus is your consciousness, and however much he may tell, so it is and not otherwise. Then again, Brahmin, in this case, suppose a certain one does not declare by any of these ways, yet maybe when he has attained a state of concentration which is void of thought, applied and sustained, one's mind can read another's thoughts and knows thus, according to the nature of the thinking of this worthy on such and such objects, will he immediately direct his thoughts. Then however much he may tell, so it is and not otherwise. This Brahmin is called the marvel of mind reading. And what Brahmin is the marvel of teaching? In this case, a certain one teaches thus, reason thus, not thus, apply your mind thus, not thus, abandon this state, acquire that state, and abide therein. This Brahmin is called the marvel of teaching. So these are the three marvels. Now of these three marvels, which appeals to you as the more wonderful and excellent? And the Buddha said, and the Brahmin said, of these marvels, Master Gautama, the marvel of supernormal power seems to me to be of the nature of an illusion. Then again, as to the marvel of thought reading, he who performs it has the experience of the marvel. It is a possession of him who performs it. This also, Master Gotama, seems to me to be of the nature of an illusion. But as to the marvel of teaching, of these three marvels, this one appears to me as the more wonderful and excellent. I'll just stop here a while to comment. This Brahmin, he shows some wisdom in saying that the marvel of teaching is more wonderful and excellent than the other two types of psychic power which the Buddha described. Perhaps because he was familiar with certain different ways of showing psychic power, we have to be very careful. Sometimes some people nowadays we see are very caught up with psychic power displays, because in the Buddha's time, even from long ago, we have heard that psychic power can be displayed by kind of black magic ways. One is using mantras. Mantras are not in the Theravada teachings, not in the original teachings of the Buddha. And some of these mantras are very powerful. And because of that, people like to use mantras. Mantras are words which have no meaning to us. When we recite the words, there is no meaning. And the meaning can only be understood by these spirits. So the Buddha did say in some sutta that he forbade his disciples to show these psychic powers, because he said if he showed psychic powers, or if he allowed his disciples to show psychic powers, those who have faith would have more faith. But those who did not have faith would say that the Buddha's disciples are using black magic and using mantras. And the Buddha quoted the names of certain mantras, which means that the Buddha was quite familiar with these mantras. In fact, in one of the suttas, even some devas who use mantras, very powerful mantras, one of them, an Asura king, was reborn in hell for using these mantras. So that is one way that people sometimes exhibit psychic power, mantras. Another one is keeping spirits, using spirits to work for them. And then another one could be using the help of some devas. Sometimes they use it to good purpose, to heal people and all that. But it could also be used for bad purpose. So the point is to be very careful when people try to hint that they have psychic power, or they show that they have psychic power, because a truly virtuous person would not show. Even if that person has psychic power, he would not show off, because it is a sign generally of ego to show off these psychic powers. And then to continue the sutta, Brahmin said, "It is strange, Master Gotama. It is wonderful how well the worthy Gotama has spoken of this thing. We do hold the worthy Gotama to possess all three marvels. Surely the worthy Gotama enjoys various kinds of supernormal power. From being one, he becomes many, etc., etc. Surely the worthy Gotama's mind can read another's thoughts when he has attained a state of concentration, void of thought, applied and sustained, so as to know, according to the nature of the thinking of this worthy one, on such and such objects will he immediately direct his thoughts. Again, surely the worthy Gotama teaches, reason thus and thus. Apply your mind thus, not thus. Abandon this state, acquire that state, and abide therein." And then the Buddha said, "Indeed, Brahmin, your words come close and challenge me to a statement. Nevertheless, I will satisfy you by replying. I do indeed possess these supernormal powers, Brahmin. I do read thoughts, I do so instruct." And then the Brahmin said, But Master Gautama, is there any other single monk possessed of these three marvelous powers besides the worthy Gautama? And the Buddha replied, yes, indeed, Brahmin. The monks possessed of these three marvelous powers are not just 1 or 2 or 3, 4 or 500, but much more than that in number. And then the Brahmin asked, pray, Master Gautama, where are those monks now dwelling? And the Buddha said, in this very order of monks, Brahmin. And the Brahmin said, excellent, Master Gautama, excellent it is, Master Gautama. Even as one raises up what is overthrown or holds up a light in the darkness, even in diverse ways has Dhamma been set forth by the worthy Gautama. I myself do go for refuge to the worthy Gautama, to Dhamma, and to the order of monks. May the worthy Gautama accept me as a lay follower who has taken refuge in him. And that's the end of the sutta. Now this last part, you find quite interesting, is that in the Raja's palace, they were discussing that formerly a lot of monks, a lot of renunciants had psychic power, but nowadays very few renunciants have psychic power. And then what the Buddha is saying is actually there are a lot more than 500, which shows that the people during the Buddha's time, they were not aware that all these monks with psychic power were around. Which brings the point I made just now, that virtuous monks never display their attainments. The Buddha said, told the monks that even if they have attainments, that they should not speak of it and should not hint of it. And if they don't have attainment and they say that they have the attainment, then it's a very, very serious offense. The most serious offense. There are 4 offenses which if a monk indulges in or practices, then he is no more a monk, even though he wears the robe. The first one, he engages in sexual intercourse. The second one, he steals something which is valuable. And according to some interpretation, what is valuable means something that is worth more than 50 ringgit or $20. And the third one is he kills a human being, or he encourages the killing of another human being. Even asking a woman to take a contraceptive to abort a child is also included. And the fourth one, if he does not have supernormal attainments, and he says that he has, these 4 ways are called parajika offenses, whereby if a monk breaks them, he is no more a monk, even though he wears the robe. And he is not allowed to ordain again in this very lifetime. Now, in that respect, a monk is not even supposed to praise his teacher, say that his teacher is such and such an Arya or something. Is not allowed. It's an offense. And then another interesting thing about this sutta is, you see, this man has challenged the Buddha to come to make a reply. He's saying that, I think you have these psychic powers, and is he saying, do you really actually have these psychic powers? And the Buddha, since he was challenged, the Buddha did confirm that he has these psychic powers. But generally, it's the Buddha that can make this kind of statement, because the Buddha is supposed to have said that that these Vinaya rules that he made for his disciples, generally not for himself. But I'm not sure whether if a monk is actually confronted with such a question, whether he can actually say that he has this psychic powers. I think if he's a virtuous monk, probably he won't answer even if he has. The other thing is, you see here is that the Buddha is also saying that, but because he was asked, where are these monks with psychic powers now residing? So he's saying that it's to be found in his order of monks. The last thing I'd like to point out here is, you see, this is one of the suttas where it shows that lay people, when they take refuge with the triple gem, it is taking refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma, which is the Buddha's teachings. And the third one is the Bhikkhu Sangha. He takes refuge with the order of monks, community of monks, Bhikkhu Sangha, that's the Pali word. So, of course, sometimes it is explained elsewhere that the Bhikkhu Sangha is also the the 8 types of Arya, the 4 pairs of Aryas. But it's the Pali word to note is always the Bhikkhu Sangha that they take refuge in.